Recovered from the shock, Eris felt the anger boiling within, eager to slap the crown prince right back. However, the fear of being thrown into prison made her reconsider. To avoid raising suspicion, our protagonist had no choice but to continue playing the role of Eris. Before leaving, she told the crown prince, "I am marrying into the royal family, not your highness. Even if you resist, we will still end up married. Of course, the same goes for me." The crown prince, with a mocking smile, retorted, "Now, that's interesting. Weren't you proclaiming your love for me not long ago? Is this your true intention?" Eris was stumped. As a time traveler, she had no clear insight into the original Eris's true feelings. But if Eris had once genuinely loved the crown prince, our protagonist wanted to respect that sentiment. So Eris replied, "I loved you before, but not anymore." Alec, hearing this, was left dumbfounded. Eris continued, "I only brought up the imperial family because I wanted to point out that this engagement was not formed by my will, but by the will of my father and his majesty. If you still like to call off the engagement, then rather than getting angry at me, how about appealing to his majesty instead?" Bidding farewell to the crown prince, Eris, with a swollen face, returned to her carriage, only to find Jason had come uninvited. Though she cared little about the judgmental gazes around, the thought of dealing with Jason after the crown prince encounter left her feeling weary. Jason, noticing Eris's reddened cheek, was told by her not to mind. Making his intentions clear, Jason was here about the knight ordination ceremony. Duke Qajar had some questions and sought to consult Marquis Mysarion. Since he had nothing else to do, he hitched a ride on her carriage to deliver the message. Eris replied, "If Sir Qajar were to request it, the imperial family would provide a carriage for you too." Jason, however, cheekily responded that the royal family's carriages didn't have a lady as beautiful as her. Eris sighed. This guy was indeed quite a sweet talker. She suggested he prepare for the next adventure, but Jason seemed hesitant. As it turned out, he recently slayed the dragon who was the mother of the nature, stirring up animosity among some vengeful dragons. Hence, he planned to lay low in the city for a while. This plot deviation from Eris's expectations hinted at a different motive for Jason's return compared to the original story where he returned to see Helena. When Jason was born, he received an oracle from a high priest, stating that he was to become the Dragon Slayer. Due to this oracle, he underwent brutal training, becoming a cold-blooded weapon. However, the one meant to be a dragon-slaying tool encountered Helena, who treated him like a person, causing him to fall in love with her helplessly. This was the novel's setup, and our main character initially thought Jason appeared merely to highlight Helena's romantic subplot. Now, it seemed there was more to it. To unravel the mystery, Eris took the initiative to hear Jason's story. Surprised, Jason remarked, "I thought you would have no interest in me." Eris replied, "I don't. I just don't like you asking me questions. At the very least, when you are telling a story, you won't be asking me anything." Jason couldn't help but self-mockingly said, "You are so cold-hearted." "Well, sure. Regardless of the intentions, I can't deny a lady's request." Then, Jason began his tale. Ever since birth, the oracle hung over him, foretelling that he would slay a dragon. The oracle was so famous, it even spread outside of the empire. Jason, burdened by this fate, underwent rigorous training. He wielded a sword as soon as he could walk. Although aware that he was destined to slay the dragon, the uncertainty of when it would happen gnawed at him. Fearing retaliatory attacks from dragons sensing the threat, Jason embarked on a journey, leaving behind his hometown to shield his loved ones. While this wandering lifestyle toughened him, deep down, he secretly entertained the thought of quietly disappearing in a remote, uninhabited land. However, each time this notion crept in, a figure would haunt Jason's heart. The echoing voice of Helena. "Jason, no matter where you are, I'll always be with you." Her words were a constant motivation, urging him to return safely. While Jason was roaming, he became acquainted with many different people, mischievous kids in rural villages, drinking buddies in bustling markets, and even a beautiful princess from a neighboring kingdom. Despite all these connections, Jason believed his best encounter was with the dragon, the most colossal being he had ever seen. However, the dragon revealed, "I only appear large due to your fear and sense of duty." This revelation enlightened Jason to the fact that his fear of being the dragon slayer was the real challenge. Wanting to live, he realized it was too late, because he knew there was no way that he could return normally, even if he did win against the dragon. But the dragon's reaction was so much different than what he had expected. With a calm demeanor, the dragon uttered, "Warrior, you finally arrived. Even though it was only an instant for me, the time I spent waiting for you was way too long." It turned out, everything was orchestrated by the dragon itself, a plan to bring an end to its own life. In truth, the dragon manipulated the high priest, bestowing the oracle that dictated Jason's fate. The dragon continued saying, "The actions I have committed for my death are not something the principle of causation would allow. As nature's light and its greatest gift, I succeeded after working hard, though, of course, I did pay an ample price." Concluding its speech, the dragon vanished in a dazzling white light, only its heart radiating pure white brilliance. Jason collected himself, raising his sword with determination and thrusting it into the dragon's heart. Finally, he slayed the dragon, gaining a new lease on life. After Jason completed his story, Eris found it to be a good story, though it didn't resonate with her. Yet, the mention of a being who manipulated the priest to kill a dragon and the principle of causation piqued her interest. Wondering if these could be new clues to return to her original world, Eris inquired about these two elements. Jason responded, "It's Priest Matthias. I heard that he returned to his hometown due to his old age. Regarding that principle, I don't know either." Thinking that keeping pushing might raise suspicion, Eris had no choice but to drop the subject. However, after this incident, Jason unexpectedly spoke up. "I feel like we've become closer. So, wouldn't it be all right for us to start speaking less stiffly from now on, Lady Mazirian?" Eris was utterly speechless, thinking, since he likes Helena, is he starting to say things she would say? Without much consideration, she flatly refused. "No, we're not that close." Jason seemed a bit dejected, but Eris remained unmoved. Soon, they arrived at the Marquis's mansion, where Jason reached out to assist her. Eris, reluctantly, extended her hand in a polite response, but Jason suddenly called out to her. Trying to console her, he said, "Don't resent those kids too much. Since they've been inside the Imperial Palace their entire lives, they've barely met with anyone else of their age, so they are a bit clumsy." Eris, somewhat angered, retorted, "They're not children. How can immaturity be an excuse for their capricious behavior?" With that, she shrugged off Jason's hand, bid him farewell, and added, "My father is in the study. You should go there. Wishing you all the best." Back in her room, the maid Emma was shocked to see Eris's swollen face and promptly applied a cold compress. Later in the evening, Eris sat in the opulent dining room of the Marquis's mansion, having dinner with her father, Marquis Mazirian. "Eris," her father suddenly spoke, breaking the overly quiet and somewhat tense atmosphere, "are you sure you are not appointing a knight?" Marquis Mazirian explained that although every year there were commoners who aspired to become knights to rise above their station, in the end, they wouldn't be chosen due to their lower status. After all, nobles, to consolidate power, would prefer knights of noble birth. However, knights from noble families were more concerned about themselves and wouldn't sacrifice their lives for their masters. On the contrary, there were cases of confusion in relationships between nobles, and masters serving knights were not uncommon. A true knight should be someone who can substitute for the master in any matter she cannot discuss with anyone, and it would never be disclosed. If exposed, such a knight could even die in place of the master. Marquis Mazirian paused, delivering a solemn message to Eris. "Bring back such a person, Eris." Hearing the explanation from her father, Eris was inwardly surprised. Marquis Mazirian's words were clearly not directed at his daughter Eris, but sounded more like a reminder to me, the outsider of this world. It made sense, though. No matter how careful one was, completely imitating and replacing a person was extremely difficult. With a slight oversight, any subtle change in habits, preferences, or even taste could expose the fact that she wasn't the original Eris. And especially when it came to the parents who had raised her the entire life, how could they not notice? Our protagonist now felt quite uncomfortable. Should I apologize? Should I say sorry for taking possession of your daughter's body? If I tell the truth, will the Marquis chase me out? Will I be called a sorceress and face interrogation? Eris felt she now was more afraid than when she was caught by Hybris, because she now felt the guilty of stealing Eris's loving family. Marquis Mazirian stood up, gently but with concern, patted Eris on the shoulder, and quietly left. Watching Marquis Mazirian's departing figure, Eris sat alone in the vast dining room, lost in thought. After a brief silence, Eris finally let the emotions that had been building up for so many days burst out. The unease of being alone in a different world, the intrigues within the palace, the grievances caused by the crown prince, the guilt towards the people around the original Eris. The numerous pressures overwhelmed Eris, and she couldn't help but cry, covering her face. I miss my dad too. I am Eris now, but what has become of me? Did I die in my world? If I became missing, are my parents looking for me? Will I be able to return? I am so scared. Little did Eris know that all of this was observed by her maid, Emma. Eris, born into one of the most influential noble families in the Empire, had always enjoyed the finest things in life. Yet, due to jealousy, she was constantly the subject of gossip behind her back. Despite being the esteemed fiancée of the crown prince, she was forever compared unfavorably to Helena, a fallen aristocrat. Though Eris had made numerous enemies within the palace, there was always one person by her side, showing deep love and care, her personal maid, Emma. Emma was a few years older than Eris and had served in the Marquis Mazirian's household since Eris was born. From the moment Emma first held the little Eris, the maid was captivated by the precious girl. Eris, with her fair skin, rosy cheeks resembling a cherub, and a radiant smile that melted Emma's heart, became the center of Emma's world. Emma silently vowed to protect her, making Eris the happiest person in the world. Despite others praising the beauty of Helena, Emma firmly believed that only those who didn't know Eris would say that. Black hair like the dark night sky, and skin that sparkles like white snow. Even her green eyes sparkled like precious gems, and Emma even thought about offering her own heart to this extraordinary lady. Given Eris's high status, many nobles harbored jealousy towards her. However, Eris never went out of her way to please those who disliked her. Instead, she responded with even more disdain. Although Eris seemed indifferent on the surface, in reality, she was not. Eris had a habit of masking her vulnerability with a strong exterior. Regarding those who gossiped behind her back, Emma assured Eris that she could report them to Marquis Mazirian, but Eris insisted, "No need for you to intervene. I have to act viciously so that all of you won't be disregarded." Emma sighed. "But, my lady, we are different from you and of lowly birth." Eris replied, "How naive. People like to shift the blame meant for me on all of you, who are servants, and torment you for it. I can't stand to watch that. All of you should be walking around with your heads up." Emma's heart warmed at Eris's words, and she hoped for her mistress's happiness. However, since Eris was recognized as a candidate for becoming the crown prince's fiancée, the royal family began teaching her countless court etiquettes and palace affairs. Eris had almost no time to sleep, yet she insisted on going to the palace, never missing a day. Despite handling complex court rituals and palace affairs, the real drain on Eris's mental energy was the crown prince's attitude and the idle gossip spreading around the palace. Emma could see Eris's desolation, but she couldn't comfort her, knowing it would hurt Eris's pride. Emma understood that Eris's heart was slowly sinking. In Emma's memory, Eris had never cried, even when others pointed fingers at her. However, one day, Emma discovered Eris hidden in a corner, her once sparkling eyes now quiet, like a stagnant pond. Emma's heart ached as she wrapped the blankets around Eris. She knew the reason for Eris's tears, but there was nothing she could do. The crown prince turned a blind eye to Eris's relentless efforts. Emma knew love wasn't important to Eris, But what she desired was recognition. Tears streamed down Eris's cheeks, and Emma's heart shattered. She held Eris tightly, knowing the only thing she could do was to pray for Eris, to hope that all of Eris's wishes would come true. However, sometimes miracles appear in the most unfortunate ways. At that moment, Eris's wish was to vanish completely from this world.